Ooh, that looks tasty.
Welcome folks, today the Hungry Gamer is back for the announcement of the Hungry Gamer Game of the Year Award, and as the bonus this year, the Expansion of the Year Award. And so, as I must say, before I get started, first off, all of these games are great. And the expansions, I like all of them a lot. Also, this is one of the only times all year that I am actually making my analysis, or whatever you want to call it, based on purely based on my own personal enjoyment of them. So this is the only time I take all of my personal likes and just throw them right in there and just follow that directly. So that does mean that games that are dungeon crawls and fantasy always have a little bit of a leg up for me because that is my personal favorite. So take that for what you will. Now, I'm going to start out with expansion of, and I had a lot of time to kind of think about how I wanted to decide the winner here. And I had a really hard time figuring out how I wanted to view these and figure them out and rank them is what I'm looking for, because all of them are changes or add-ons to a game that already exists. And so the question was, well, do I take the core game into account? Because obviously the core game is very much part of it. And so it was a very hard thing for me to parse. And so what I finally landed on was the idea that the expansion had to be something that I couldn't do without in the game. And that was criteria number one. Then the next thing was, okay, taking into consideration that I definitely would never want to play without the expansion again. I would always want to use all of it. And then the next part was kind of how much of the expansion needs to be in there, because many of these expansions are very modular, right? And so it became, well, if I might do without parts or maybe not be interested in some bits of the expansion, how does that change things? And then, of course, it came down to just the pure fun provided just by the expansion bits. So very kind of nebulous, hard to figure out. But with all of that said, this is what I wound up with. So coming at number 6 is Chaos and Copperforge, the expansion for Battle for Red Dragon Inn, Battle for Greyport, which is their deck building game. To be clear, I love the new characters. I love the new bad guys. I love all of that. But I'm still going to play this game sometimes without any of it. I mean, sure, some of the cards are going to be shuffled in all the time, but I might play with the original heroes against the pirates, or I might play with some of the pirate heroes against just the original bosses. So for that reason, as great as it is, and as much as I love the game, Chaos and Copperforge comes in at number 6. At number 5, we have Uprising, Curse of the Last Emperor, Titans of the First Age. And I think this expansion is an improvement in every way over just the core game. It takes out some of the bad luck that you can have with a little bit of dice mitigation. It adds some different, it makes the game to where you can make it a little bit easier. It adds some awesome new factions. I mean, the 2 new factions that you get are so good. The new bad guys are good. The new hex tiles you get are great. And so while I will always use some bits of this, like I will always use the new druid cards, I think, the rest of it is kind of maybe I will use, maybe I won't use. And so because of that, it's coming in at number 5, a fantastic expansion, and I would not buy the game without this particular expansion. I think it is that good, and I think the game is fantastic. I had a great time just this last weekend when I pulled it back out for kind of the last kind of test of it. But because of all that, Titans of the First Stage, the Uprising, Curse of the Last Emperor expansion, which is the longest name ever, comes in at number 5. Then at number 4, we have Furnace Interbellum. Now, this is the first one that I would never play any of this game without the expansion, by choice. Who knows, maybe someone just wants to learn it, they don't want to do it, fine, whatever. But I would always put in all of this expansion. I think it just makes the game that much more interesting in every single way. It's a wonderful, wonderful expansion. And honestly, this is one that's just kind of running into, as I mentioned at the beginning, my personal preferences of fantasy and dungeon crawl and things like that, because this is, industrialism, which is pretty far down the list on types of themes I'm going to go chasing after. But guys, it is so great. It's such a fun game. Go out and buy this game. It is so much fun. But that is my number 4 expansion of the year. My number 3 expansion of the year is Warpgate Beyond. And this was a little bit of a cop-out because I replaced all the old cards, so you literally can't play it without the expansion. But having played prior without the expansion, it's just better in every way, shape, and form. It makes the multiplayer game go faster. It makes the solo game more interesting, and just all around, it really makes this game a better game. And that, I think, is what an expansion should do. It takes it from a game that's, for me, a borderline game in my collection. Because, space, 4X, but it's fast, it's a small box, and now this expansion makes it into a game that just pops and is one that will probably show up in my Take to Con collection almost every time I go to a convention, at least when it's local. Very good game, very clever, wonderful, wonderful expansion. Taking a game that, to be fair, I think is a good game. Like, I reviewed Warpgate quite well because I think it's a good game. But for my personal collection, it was a little bit borderline. If it wasn't a small box, I might not have held on to it. But now it's one that is not leaving my collection anytime soon. Makes it a lot better. Enjoy Warpgate Beyond. That is my number 3 expansion of the year. So now we come to the top 2. We have Cosmic Frog, Find Muck, and we have Revive, Call of the Abyss. 2 great expansions. And 2 games for me that are kind of polar opposites, because Cosmic Frog just thrives so much on its theme and the world and the 3-mile-high frog jumping around through space and the ether and knocking people to other dimensions, and the expansion as this like mental combat, and it rebalances some of the power, and it adds this new type of tile that you really have to work hard to get to, but if you can get it, it's very cool and just really clever, versus something that I think is just a mechanic wonder. And the theme's interesting in Revive, this kind of repopulating the world, and it's very interesting. Like, truly, it's fascinating. But it doesn't come through a lot in the play. What that game shines on is just mechanical brilliance. Like, the gameplay mechanics are just amazing. I would play Revive if it was a bunch of letters and numbers out there and just do the stuff. Just wonderful. And of course, the art is beautiful and components are great and all that. And so, for me, I took this and I looked at it and I thought, okay, so for this I looked at every single part of the expansion. And so for Cosmic Frog, you have the option not to use dice, but to use chips. You have these muck lands, and you have this psychic combat, and you have new abilities. Versus Revive, where you have this new sideboard, these new uber powerful cards, a change in the way the scoring objectives works, and a way to kind of get more of these little icons, these science icons, and to kind of get more points. And so I looked at both of those, and then I tried to analyze each and every one and say, okay, compared to the original game, how much do I like all of these? And so with the second place finisher here, it came down to, there is one thing that I like a lot, but it feels like it doesn't come up as much. And perhaps as I play more, it will come up more often, versus the other one, which is the top finisher, where I just think everything about this game, the new stuff, is better across the board on a game that I already thought was very good. So with that said, the expansion runner-up of the year is Cosmic Frog Find Muck. And the only thing that knocked it to the side is I haven't mastered the way the muck lands work. I just haven't quite figured it out yet. And I love them, but I don't know that it's as integral to the game for me as the jellyfish cards are. I can't remember what they're called, but the jellyfish cards are, and the sideboard, and the new scoring methods that you have in Revive Call of the Abyss. I think that is just one of the greatest expansions I have ever gotten in any game ever, period. It is just that good. And you have to understand, Cosmic Frog Find Muck is a brilliant expansion, which makes a crazy-ass wacky game even crazier, even wackier, and even better. But there you have it. The expansion of the year is Revive Call of the Abyss from Aporta Games. What a delight. Now, moving into the big boys here, we're talking about the game of the year. And this was a little more familiar for me. I went back and I played every single one of them multiple times, and I just sat down and said, okay, which one is bringing me the most joy? In my Marie Kondo style. Yeah, right. Board game collectors, Marie Kondo. Yeah, it doesn't work. But which one did I purely have the most fun with? And then the only other thing I kind of put in there was which ones am I able to play at various player counts? Because all of these games are ones that I can play solo or I can play in a group. I can play solo or with 2, or solo with 3, solo with 4, and in the case of 2 of them, up to 5, or one of them up to 6 players. And so it just became a kind of putting all of that together. Though the core thing was, which one do I just have the most fun every time I play? So, and again, all of these are just so good. They are so very good. But coming in at number 5 is Tanaris Adventures. Really good game. The only thing that holds this one back for me is, for the most part, I'm only playing it by myself. Canadian Kev and I, we might start a digital campaign, so there will be 2 of us playing. But it's a heavier game. There's so much going on. You have the different phases, and this phase you're flipping back and forth from this book to this book to this book. And there's a lot going on, and it actually took me an entire game or 2 just to settle back into how the game is played. And so for that reason, I'm pretty much only playing it by myself, and it's very heavy. It's a heavier dungeon crawl. It's not the heaviest one I own. It's not the heaviest one I enjoy, but it's a heavier dungeon crawl. And so because of that, it's settling into number 5 on the list. Though it was Beatrice the Board Game Dog's Game of the Year, so they probably only care about that one. Anyway, number 4 on the list is Expeditions from Stonemaier Games. This one it's just a delight. It's just a delight, and quite frankly, all this one's running into is it's got that kind of steampunk-ish, or whatever they call it. It's not exactly steampunk, but that alternate universe, stompy mechs, kind of steam-powered-ish meteorite falling. It's just a theme that's just not as exciting to me. And like with Revive earlier, I think this is a game that thrives on its mechanics more than the theme, though it is beautiful to look at. And with that said, this is not a game that I necessarily want to play at max player count. This is a game I want to play at 2 and 3 players and solo for the most part. And so for that reason, it landed at number 4. Number 3 on the list is one that I actually had thought in my head was going to fall a little bit lower until I went back and played it again, and that is Theurgy. And this is one that I've been banging on about for literally years. And it's one that I was positive was going to be in my candidates for Game of the Year last year. It didn't show up in time. And I just really like this game. It's a lot of fun. It has such a fascinating theme, and I think mechanics are so tightly tied to the theme, and it's fitting that it's right next to Expeditions, which is based on Scythe, because a lot of what the designers of this did, they told me, were in many ways, inspired by the action selection system in Scythe. I really enjoy everything about Theurgy, and the reasons it's wound up as only number 3 is, one, is mostly because I finally played a 6-player game, and it didn't quite survive as well at the 6 players that it does at 3, 4, and even 5. And along with that, the solo mode is one that I enjoy, but I'm probably not going to play that solo mode nearly as much. But just the way the theme is implemented, the actions, all of it, I just think is so very good. The art looks great, and just overall really impressed with that game. Still impressed. It's just a delight. Which brings us to the top 2, which are 2 adventure dungeon crawl games for the 2nd year in a row, because last year we had Familiar Tales and we had Oathsworn. The Oathsworn's Boss Battler and whatever. And so this year we have Kinfire Chronicles, which is a low luck adventure dungeon crawl game, where you where you're doing these card play, and it's very much you're working with the other characters that are out there, and they're kind of boosting each other back and forth. And I'm actually doing a playthrough series of this on the channel right now, so you can actually kind of see how that works. Very, very clever game. The only thing that it has as a knock against it for me is I think it's a little bit easy, though I'm still decently early in the campaign. I think I'm probably 30% through, maybe 25% through. There's a lot going on. I've played 6 games, I think. I keep going off on the side quests, but I haven't really been challenged too much yet. Hopefully that's going to change. I hear it does get a little bit harder. And the other thing is, there's no dice. There's no dice in it. I love my dice. I love my chaos. And so you don't get a ton of that here. Then the other knock that it has against it, I said the only knock, but the other knock that it has against it is, this is one that I don't want to play at 3-4 players. And that's because the initiative system is very much like Cosmic Frog, where one person can go over and over and over again. And if you're playing with a lot of different people, someone might wind up not going a lot because the bag will reset. You're playing solo like I am, it doesn't matter. It becomes very exciting. It is so exciting and tense when you're drawing these things out and you're hoping one of your people are going to go, but it's not. It's the other character's going, the bad guys are going. Become very tense and exciting, but something to keep in mind. And then we have Tales from the Red Dragon Inn, which is a world and an IP that I really enjoy. I really love the characters, and the ones that they picked are some just wonderful characters, and they have done a fantastic job of taking that whimsicality of Red Dragon Inn and just throwing it right into the game, even down into the rule set they use, which just fits the world. Like this idea that, well, your range is 3, and yeah, you can throw that knife around a corner. Why? Because you're a hero. So you throw it, it bounces off the wall and hits something. And even one of the cards is got Zot the Wizard. So yeah, lightning curves around corners. And it fits the world so well. And I love the way it's been set up, whereas Kenfire Chronicles has an adventure book, which I think is great. These have these preset maps that you put out, which allows you to have a different AI for the same standees, quest after quest after quest, which I think is just wonderful. The way it works is just so tight, and as tight as Kenfire Chronicles is, Tales from the Red Dragon is as well. Tales from the Red Dragon Inn is just as tight, except it uses dice instead of this card-based system. Though the dice are tied to your cards, but you get the idea. And so both of these are just wonderful. Wonderful. And so for me, it came down to, and with Red Dragon, and I have played it solo several times, but I'm actually playing through it with 3 other people in our kind of every monthly or bi-monthly or whatever session where we get together and we play through dungeon crawls, and we are having just a blast with it. And it is because of that I want to play Tales from the Red Dragon Inn with 4 people. I want to play it by myself. It's very easy to swap characters in and out, where it's not quite so easy in Kenfire Chronicles. Because of that, we have the runner-up for the game of the year is Kenfire Chronicles, which is, I think, is a drastically underappreciated dungeon crawl adventure game in the genre right now, is just edged out by Tales from the Red Dragon Inn, which I also think is a drastically underrated dungeon crawl in the genre right now. Both of these games are fantastic. You can get them relatively inexpensively, and both should be purchased. I had to pick one. Just like last year, it was very hard to choose, but I'm going with Tales from the Red Dragon Inn, edging out Kenfire Chronicles because I feel more comfortable playing with multiple players. I like dice more than cards, and I think the likelihood of me playing through Tales from the Red Dragon Inn multiple times, like I've done with Wander the Cult of Barnacle Bay, is more likely than Kenfire Chronicles. However, slightly. I think I'll probably play it through both of them at least one more time. I think I'll probably play through Tales from the Red Dragon Inn multiple times. So there you have it, folks. That is my list. I would love to know down in the comments how you would have ranked these games. And also, what is your game of the year? What is your expansion of the year, and why? And of course, the winning games will get their wonderful seals, either this one for the expansion of the year, or this one for game of the year. The others already have their seals for being nominated, And the Game of the Year winner will eventually get a lovely 3D printed trophy courtesy of Geek HQ, and you'll find a link to them down in the description as well. They do they do all things geek, but they can make some really cool stuff, and I always appreciate that they help me out with this printing. So there you have it, folks. That is the Game of the Year and Expansion of the Year winners. As always, if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, share, maybe become a channel member. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.